this week's episode of TalkStone.
Everything HCT America's Fall Playoffs and a special edition of the Well Played Moment. And Dan, because we're celebrating the end of playoffs and all our players qualified to the Fall Championship, we're bringing back meme history.
Everybody get in here. Let's break down all the esports action. Welcome to TalkStone, your premier source for all things competitive Hearthstone news and analysis. This is the last of the HCT Fall Playoffs special. We did one every single week to cover what happened the previous weekend. And America's was the last players that we were sending to the Fall Championships. And so it's going to be the last of these short but very fun and memorable podcast episodes. TJ, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good, Dan. Playoffs is wrapped. As always, playoffs is pretty exhausting experience. But
I am very tired.
Yeah, it's always fun. We're recording this like literally the day after playoffs. So we ended on America's though, which is I think closest to at least my normal schedule of sleep.
You have a sleep schedule now
I
that
do
you have
now.
a baby?
I do. Yeah. He's starting to get a little bit more of a rhythm. You know, at night still have to wake up and feed him, but he just goes right back to sleep.
Yeah, but eventually he shows up and casts with you at HCT.
Yeah, so, that's right.
Yeah. It's not easy being Admirable's dad, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Only one man can bear that cross.
Yeah, only one person knows how to groom his beard the way he wants to.
And that's not him.
Yeah.
So, actually, full disclosure, we were supposed to have a guest this week.
And it was supposed
to be That's Admirable. But he lied.
He didn't lie.
He straight up lied.
There was a miscommunication is what we'll call it.
Miscommunication. Admirable said his flight was supposed to leave at 7 p.m. today. Ends up being 11 a.m., which is, basically when we're recording.
Yeah.
And we can't have him on the episode, and he's supposed to kind of come up here, do his fun shenanigans, do a bunch of impressions and bits. He was all ready for it. He actually had 5 music parodies ready in mind to sing random Hearthstone / pop music crossovers.
So we're all missing out because of the miscommunication. Yeah, we didn't have time to change his flight, but Dan, it's just gonna be me and you today.
I know they're stuck with us.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Well, today we're gonna go over America's playoffs, like you said. We're gonna do some stuff, just wrapping up playoffs in general. Then we're going to have well-played moments, meme history, talk about the tour, talk about maybe some other small things here around the tavern, and then tell you about what is in the future for TalkStone in the coming weeks, considering that we're on a different schedule.
Yeah.
So let's first start things off with the America's playoffs, TJ. Big picture, what were the standout moments for you coming into this past weekend?
I don't think America's has the kind of star power representation that Asia Pacific saw with the 4 players qualifying for the Fall Championship. But I'm honestly really happy with the 4 players that qualified. I'll just kick it off right away. Just saying. The best year of any – I said this exact same thing about Hunter Ace. The best year of any player in Hearthstone's history. I feel like we've been saying that a lot lately. This has been probably the best year for the hard work pays off type thing that we talked about a lot in the last episode. And just saying qualifying is just kind of the icing on the cake for a lot of players. We're getting closer to the flippening is probably the best way to put that, Dan.
Well, yeah, just because we're progressing every single week a little bit further and further and flipping those percentages. TJ, you sent out a tweet the other day. Was it the other week?
It was after he won Montreal.
Oh, you're just beating me to the punch. It could have been any tweet that you posted in recent times.
No, I know which tweet it is because we're
selfies
talking about
with
just saying.
Admirable
I actually haven't been tweeting that much lately. I've been off my meme game.
No, you haven't. You're still on point.
I've been off my.
Do I have to show you the picture?
Twitter meme game. I've been off my Twitter meme game. My casting meme game still prime, but I said that there's no player that I've ever cast, and I've been casting Hearthstone for a long time. There it is. I can't even see it. I can see it on your phone.
I can see it. I can feel it. I don't even see it right now.
Yeah, that was after the Language Hacker versus Conrad
You got
series.
a notification on it. We'll cut that from the show.
But, I said that no player has ever made me say when casting a game of Hearthstone, wow, this guy's good, more than just saying has. He has those moments where almost every time I watch him, where I would make a completely different line of play, and then I think about it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's good.
Yeah, Sand is very good at covering all his bases. I think one of his best attributes is learning how to take the perfect middle ground of like, this is the best play if my opponent has good cards, or even necessarily the like awkward cards that could half respond to it. Like, he's able to account for everything possible and then come up with the single best line that's able to hedge for everything. Sometimes it gets him in trouble because he overthinks it, so to speak, and then like gives his opponent too much respect. And that's often what sometimes costs him certain games and maybe series. And so maybe if he played a little bit riskier and then, took perhaps a more bold line of play, he could have won some of those games and consequently the tournaments. But is that what you consider to be the best kind of play? It's up for debate for sometimes.
Well, this year I think it is because the system of HCT this year rewards that kind of play because we're seeing the same players in top 16s and top 8s and top 4s. So he's playing against the same players over and over again. When he gets to top 8s and top 4s at tour stops, which he's done a ton of times this year. I mean, I've watched Hunter Ace versus Just Saying in a tour stop like 4 times already this year. And when you're playing against top players like that, you're much more likely to be rewarded for those kinds of plays and those kinds of reads because that's what your practice is. Your practice is against the players that are doing similar things. They're at the top level of Hearthstone play. If you really think about the system and where Just Saying strengths lie, as you mentioned, it's not really a surprise that this year is the year where he finds that breakout performance.
So part of what I love about Sand's most recent hot streak is that Americas becomes interesting just like Europe and Asia Pacific for the points leader position. In the past couple of years, Muzzy's been dominating. Every year he's been kind of the runaway number one, so to speak, or the clear number one. Maybe some people give him a run for money like Zalay. But I think now that we have like Hunter Ace and Fino that was kind of trading spots, and then Doc Rivius and Shaxi trading spots, Sand had a little bit of that momentum early on, but we weren't sure if he was able to keep it up because Muzzy just went charging through, winning Copa, top 16 at so many events, qualifying for these tour stops online to offline. Muzzy looked once again like the clear favorite. And Stan was even telling me personally, he's like, I have like 1 or 2 more chances to really make this competitive. Otherwise, Muzzy's just going to run away with it. And now, finally, we can just say, like, there's a clear rivalry going on, and it's even made better by the fact that these guys are teammates and friends and practice partners. So I think that's what makes it ultimately, like, a very cool and well-rounded story. I find it very interesting that you bring up Just Saying's lineup because it might look like a fairly common one that we've seen over the past few weeks, but part of what makes this lineup very good for why it performed well was because of the rise of Even Warlocks and Quest Rogue. Crazy representation this week. And that actually made decks like Zoo Warlock a lot better if you choose to ban the Even Warlock strategy. So Saiyan makes a read that, okay, Even Warlock's going to be a lot more popular. I'm going to try to specifically curtail a lineup that's banning the Even Warlock, and then being able to capitalize on everyone just thinking that Quest Rogue is going to be really good.
Yeah.
And that's what made Zoo Warlock such a good lead for so many series. If you just watch Saiyan play, like Zoo Warlock ended up having a very good, powerful pocket in the meta for this week specifically. And then you kind of mentioned Secret Hunter being weak. That ends up having a nice dynamic to the meta, which just shows that you can't just play a lineup that's quote, good. You know, if you just play the good lineup every single week, you're going to get crushed some weeks because the meta evolves, and that's what you want to see from tournaments.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool thing because the previous week, we saw Doc Rivius qualify with Mechathune lineups.
Yes.
And so everyone's like, well, I want to beat that, and Even Warlock performed really well, and Token Druid was still good, so let's bring Token Druid, Even Warlock, Quest Rogue, some of these other decks that we've seen a lot.
Yeah, and a lot of players made different reads on the meta.
Yeah.
Even after seeing deck lists, Just Saying, I saw him say that they weren't confident. Him and his practice group weren't confident in the aggro lineup. Even with all the Quest Rogue, there was just too much other stuff in the field that could get in the way.
Right.
But ultimately a 9-0 run for him. And kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum of deck lists, it was Bloodyface. Bloodyface, I can confidently say that he, out of the 4 players that qualified, played the best on the on-stream matches. There was more times where Bloodyface was in tough situations with his lineup, facing aggressive lineups with a anti-control strategy. He had Malagos Druid, Recruit Death Rattle Hunter, Quest Rogue, and Even Warlock. There were so many times on stream where against an aggro lineup, he just found such clean lines to be able to win games that otherwise wouldn't be winnable. And Just Saying played very well, but there was so many moments where Bloodyface just flat out impressed me. And maybe a tiny bit of a spoiler alert. Maybe we'll talk about some of his plays more a little bit later on one of our segments.
Sure. Meme history.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think Quest Rogue was a deck that he piloted well. It's a deck that can be hard to pilot, especially in aggro matchups.
Yes. Well, we can talk a little bit more about that in a second there.
Yeah, but the thing that strikes me for Bloodyface is Bloodyface actually had a really tough moment in the last playoffs. He had a situation where he was very well positioned to qualify for a top 8, and he was in a match where it was regamed due to his opponent disconnecting, and he ended up not qualifying for top 8 because of the outcome of that match. And ultimately, that's a situation where a lot of players will get discouraged, or
tweet about it,
or it's a really bad situation to have happened to you, and it's one that's just out of his control completely. It's just an unfortunate thing to happen, and he comes back the very next season after quitting his job and pursuing Hearthstone full time, which he actually hasn't been doing for that long.
Yeah,
he said the very first playoffs after making that switch to playing Hearthstone full time he qualified for. Just kind of a heartwarming story to see him qualify for a championship.
I've seen him make deep runs even dating back to 2015 at the very end of the season, or at the end of the year when we're determining who's going to the World Championship.
The HWC.
The HWC.
Yeah, the Hearthstone World Championship. It wasn't the Hearthstone Championship Tour because we didn't go anywhere. It was play online, and then
we went to Burbank.
Go to Worlds. Yeah. So it was he's been around for a while. Has the Magic background as Kibler will attest to. He's known him for even longer. Than we have.
Kibler chose Bloodyface just because he's been very consistent. He's been streaming a lot, so you guys should just check him out. Very personable dude. Very well rounded at all things in card games in general. Like you said, his other gaming background, but I saw him do really well in like a dungeon run competition when they were like doing like the streaming challenges.
He's the next jockey.
him and Language Hacker both actually got there. That's why I actually confused them both because I was like, was it Language Hacker or Bloodyface? Like, no, it's actually both of them.
Yeah.
That did really well and qualified for the next round, which is a cool fact. But yeah, love that interview. Very heartwarming, saying how he wanted to pursue Hearthstone full time just to see what it was like for a while, and then having results immediately, which is not always going to happen. Just for anybody who also wants to follow that train, these are the inspirational stories to help get you motivated. Perhaps not necessarily tell you to quit your job just to pursue Hearthstone full time. It's a very difficult and narrow path for a lot of people.
Yeah, he was at the top end of competitive play before he quit his job.
Yes.
And then he made the decision. So
yes.
Some people are like, the path.
Dude, if I had time, I would hit rank 5 every month and get Dad Legend. Let's be very reasonable about it. But at the same time, it's a very nice, heartwarming story regardless. And we mentioned Language Hacker, and I think the same thing is for him as well. This guy also works at a very high-end normal job. I think he works in bank risk management.
Yeah.
So he understands real-world applications of Hearthstone with risk management, etc. But this guy also has been grinding for a lot, and he's been doing well in certain tour stops or at DreamHacks in the past. And I just love to see hard work pay off for some of these people because, of course, we want to see Purple and Muzzy and all these people who have been to the World Championships a lot continue to do well just for the consistency and also because they're some of our favorite players. But, part of what makes Hearthstone really interesting to watch is always the new faces that challenge those guys. And it's like, well, are they actually as new as we think they are? It's like, not really. They've been competing and having deep runs for years now. And it's like they deserve recognition and spotlight too. So as much as it's great to have Saiyan in that storyline that we can hang on to it, and as much as it's sad that, Purple versus Language Hacker we could only have one, it was cool to see him qualify, and he played pretty solid all weekend long.
Yeah, and
he also had the funniest game of the weekend, too.
He did.
But we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, he did. Language Hacker, the one thing that I've noticed is that we're not really seeing the first-time playoff championship qualifiers anymore. It's all players that have been in the scene for a while, that have built up that experience. Language Hacker, even Abel and I cast him over the past 2 to 3 years in TESPA. He played for the University of Waterloo. He had some playoff TESPA runs too, as well with the team from his university. So, and a funny story, for a long time, because of the way Language Hacker's name is spelled, he like takes out some vowels and kind of not
third at a spelling bee, by the way, like a regional spelling bee. And
yeah.
It's funny that he misspells his username on purpose.
Yeah,
I hope
for effect.
Yes.
Admirable called him Ingwich Hacker.
Ingwich,
because the lowercase L looks like an I and there's no A after the L.
So he just connected the words.
Yes, and so he just connected the words. And we never got clarification on test because we broadcast so many universities and so many names, and so nobody ever corrected him. And I sat next to him. I didn't even know he was calling him English Hacker. When you say English Hacker fast, it just sounds like you're saying Language Hacker.
Right, like a little tick.
And so when me and Admiral casted his first match at playoffs, and I called him Language Hacker right before we went on stage, and he looks at me weird, and he goes, "Did you say Language Hacker?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's who we're casting." He said, "You let me call him English Hacker for 2 years." And I said, I had no idea that he was doing it. And Admiral was upset. He was just really upset at himself, at me, at the world.
I
don't know.
At himself, and then he projected that anger onto you and the rest of the world. Like most admirable rants tend to originate.
But it just kind of funny that we've been following for that long, and finally gets his chance. And I've been following on Twitter for a long time. It was just really cool to unintentionally, just by looking at my Twitter feed, follow his progression from casting him in TESPA, which is, there's a lot of players that don't even hit Legend that play in TESPA that actually make it really far.
Yeah.
It's kind of like grassroots, really early competitive play for a lot of players, a lot of young players, and making it all the way to a couple playoff experiences and now going to a championship. That was nice to see.
I like that you make the distinction of young players for TESPA, because that tends to be the demographic they're aiming for, like the young amateur scene. But then you look at like Amnesiac, who's been competing for like 4 or 5 years. It's like, is he considered?
He's not even in college yet.
Is he considered old? He's applying to colleges.
Yeah.
He's trying to come to like the West Coast or thinking about applying locally. He's really talented too. I mean, it's not about Amnesiac, but just the idea is that we have a lot of young budding talent in Hearthstone. It's really exciting to watch them rise up. You brought up a really interesting point in that we don't really get too many, Joe to Pro. Royal Road is what they call in StarCraft, where it's like your first try, you actually go really far. Yeah. We don't get too many of those stories anymore in Hearthstone, given that some of these players are actually back season after season. Tincho's another one of them. He's been at it for a long time. I picked PNC just because I always like to pick someone from Latin America, because I always think that they're a really underrepresented region. They're definitely just as strong, in my opinion, as North America compared to South. And then I also really like PNC's lineup. But, Tincho can represent Argentina and the rest of LATAM right now. And I think, Naoki Don and Reyes were all tweeting their support for him. Really cool to see, once again, another season, Latin America shows up. And I really have high hopes for Tincho. And I think he played very reasonably well.
Yeah, and he actually practiced with Naoki, a big practice partner of him, even back when Naoki made his run at the Summer Championship. We competed at 2 Summer Championships in a row.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
The last playoffs, the last champs of last year was the Summer Championship, and the first championship of this year was the Summer Championship.
Yeah. Shout out to Naoki, by the way. It was a pretty respectable finish, even though.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things, too, about just like Latin America is I always love how much support they get from the community. And that's one thing that I feel like is very reflective of just how the scene is developing as a whole. Like, this is kind of a step back from specifically playoffs, but just kind of like really nice to see players be very active on social media and actively root and cheer for each other. Like, you're seeing some players talk about how they're happier or sadder for other players and peers than for themselves, right? Like, oh, this player Saiyan made it, and all of a sudden people are changing their Twitter handles to like Saiyan's #1 fan. And it's like they're acting as if they're going to the championship or they became, the world #1 player.
Yeah.
And they're like saying like, oh, I'm creating my own top 10 player tier list or power rankings, and I'm putting Saiyan #1. Like, everyone's being very happy for him, which is really nice. And then you see like some heartbreaking moments where like some players couldn't make it, and everyone's like, no, I'm just as crushed or if not sadder. And I think that's awesome to see the respect and the camaraderie that happens in our competitive scene. And you see that happening around Tincho as well, like when he's able to qualify for his first big breakout performance.
And I feel like the longer Hearthstone competitive play goes on, the more we're going to see those stories, because the more we're going to have players that try for years and years and then finally have that performance. So Tincho also brought the aggressive lineup, same lineup as Saiyan, with the Token Druid, Secret Hunter, Odd Rogue, and Zoo Warlock.
It's a good lineup.
It's a very good lineup, and he had his qualifying match. He had a game where he was playing Secret Hunter against a Warlock and had one of the roughest early games ever. Nothing going for him. Finds Deathstalker Rexar, and the way he played that match was just, I thought it was great. I would have gone a completely different way. There's kind of two ways. It went to fatigue with Deathstalker Rexar, and every turn he was just discovering zombies. And his first couple zombies were sick. He got the Bloat-Bat Poisonous Rush, the Skater, to be able to clear off a post-Blood River Gul'dan board. He got the Bittertide Hydra
Lifesteal.
Yeah. So it just negates the effect. It's just a huge, cheaper body to be able to stabilize. And then once it got to that fatigue scenario, most players would go for the route of control and have the inevitability. But his opponent, which I believe was Peltire at the point, had Azari, the Devourer, had the Rin Chain going. And he didn't want to have to deal with the 10-10. So instead of just playing like a control style and trying to just ride his zombies to the end, he played super aggressive, picked charge minions, picked plus attack, adapt, and made him so he could never play Azari the Devourer. So fatigue was closer at the end, and he was able to eke it out. And Secret Hunter obviously underperformed for a lot of players in the tournament, especially the players with the aggressive lineups. The Odd Rogue Zoo Warlock Token Druid package was performing very well. But Secret Hunter was the deck that was tough to push through, and when you see a player find a creative way to win in a matchup with you have a bad start, be able to do it in such a cool fashion like that in his qualifying game was really interesting to watch, and I got to cast that match, and I would have told you that he was not going to win that game up until the last 3 turns. So.
And that was not the well-played moment. TJ just kind of went on an entire rant there.
That moment was very well-played, but that's not the well-played moment.
The well-played moment.
Yeah.
It was a well-played moment.
Yes. But I just, as we wrap up Americas, we talked about the 4 qualifying players. I did want to talk about sort of the overall landscape of decks quickly before we end this segment. Even Warlock underperformed. And Quest Rogue, I think, with how many aggro lineups there were, I honestly think Quest Rogue overperformed.
Okay. That's fair. Are you waiting for me to respond, or do you want to continue throwing out stats?
No, I want to hear your thoughts on my assessment.
So even Warlock, when you are the most represented deck, your win rate tends to condense very closely to the 50% line. The win rate that we were showing on broadcast is not the win rate of the deck. It's the win rate of that deck in a lineup.
Yes.
Because it's very hard for the admins to track every single game of every single archetype. Plus, there are some archetypes that bleed. Like if you want to track Malygos versus Malygos Togwaggle, that's very hard to differentiate.
Yeah.
So what we do is we track the overall lineup win rate. So, to be fair, we don't know the exact win rate of the Even Warlock this weekend. But that being said, it doesn't surprise me nearly as much because, 1, its representation was so high, and 2, people were accounting for Even Warlock. Why do you think so many Taunt Druids came out of nowhere?
Yep.
People were anticipating others to jump on the train because, in these past 2 weeks, people should be refining the lineups that people know are good. So in week 2, even Warlock destroyed the field, almost 60% win rate across that's just insane. So everyone's like, wow, this is just too good not to bring. And everyone started dusting out old decks from the woodworks like Taunt Druid, like Big Ramp Druid, that could really crush some of these even Warlocks early on, and then just be able to ride easy victories. So I think the stats for Even Warlock are a little bit misleading. It's still a fantastic deck to bring to tournaments, but it definitely underperformed relative to what you're saying. However, I will refute what you're saying, and I think Quest Rogue performed exactly how we expected to. I think that deck
exactly
is
how
insane.
You expected to. Dan, what I didn't preface in my statement was underperformed or overperformed based off my own personal expectations.
Well, I feel like, the fact that a lot of people fell off the Zoo Warlock train, which is probably the second worst matchup for Quest Rogue these days, because I think Odd Rogue is really bad, unless you count Tempo Mage in the mix too. So Tempo Mage, Odd Rogue, and for Zoo Warlock, all 3 of those decks are the problematic matchups for Quest Rogue, and all 3 of them saw crazy drop in representation. Yeah, because if you play Even Warlock, you can't play Zoo. If you play Quest Rogue, you can't play Odd Rogue. So I definitely knew that Quest Rogue would perform really well this weekend, which is why it was one of the basis of my predictions.
So was Taunt Druid, which was a good call as well.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'm not unhappy with the predictions. I'm a little sad that, like, I think Dog kind of messed up there at the very end on stream. It's not a good way to go out when you realize you could have played much better and potentially even came back in the series. And if Dog won that, he would have gone most likely to the top 8. The playoffs itself, I want to just give out a couple of like awards or just like notable mentions.
Some superlatives.
The game of the playoffs has to be, Language Hacker versus Conrad, where it was such a funny game of, what was it, Shutterwalk Shaman versus Death Rattle Hunter.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was a series of catastrophic events where it led to some ridiculous Hagatha outcomes and a face that I will never forget for the rest of my life, where TJ afterwards looked exhausted but pleasured and a little bit confused. And I want to show it to the stream. If you're listening on the audio-only podcast, I highly encourage you to watch the VOD. This face is fantastic. I tweeted out and people memed it immediately.
The gist of it is...
You're a global treasure.
The gist of it is his Shutterwalk failed. He was kind of like forced into a situation where he had to play it, so he had to go off Hagatha value. Somehow he gets Archmage Antonitis off of the Unstable Evolution that he got from Hagatha. He gets a handful of Fireballs, but Deathstalker Rexstar is on the other side, and there was just some crazy... He didn't really have any other win condition. Like, if Conrad was able to like heal up and outlive the Fireballs, or even find lethal himself, which he was very close to with the way his board panned out, it was just nuts. And honestly, I think neither player really knew what to do, because I'm sure they had never been in a situation quite like that before.
Those are the best games. TJ, my favorite thing in competitive Hearthstone is great play in close games. So, like, high-level, pristine, perfect, optimal play.
But there's a but to this.
My second favorite Hearthstone, which is 1A. Sorry, 1B. 1A is, like, surrender-type stuff when he did crazy, or Hoy, etc.
Pheno versus Just Saying.
That's my favorite type of Hearthstone. 1B, at very close second, is sloppy, messy, chaotic Hearthstone.
Yes.
And with full of regrets, surprises, shocks, and plot twists. And that was full of them with Conrad versus Language Hacker. Language Hacker got like Unstable Evolution multiple times off of Hagatha, got Archmage Antonius off his evolutions, started collecting Fireballs but couldn't play them because Conrad was presenting threats, but Conrad was messing up, and then evolves his Antonius as his last second decision to get Grand Archivist, which pulls out a Volcano and destroys his own board of taunts so that Hunter can attack it. It was ridiculous.
Yes.
And it was... the climax, the apex of it was admirable, shrieking at tones that were never thought possible from that stocky man. It was fantastic to watch, and you guys did an excellent job casting and delivering the hype at the moment. Well done. That was the game of the playoffs for me. The coolest story of the playoffs for me was Doc Rivius' lineup, double Mecha'thun, being able to play really wacky stuff, so that we've talked about it at length. I think the most under-discussed story of the playoffs is Bunny Hopper getting 9th. We haven't actually seen someone who's been able to win a championship and then follow it up with motivated and a caring performance, As much as we're like, oh, Killing All Day went 0-3, etc., hashtag YoCat. It's a little bit disappointing that it feels like some players, when they've already made it, just kind of take it off some time. Bunny Hopper came very close, 9th place in the playoffs. In Europe, the most stacked region in all of Hearthstone. If he just had a little bit better tiebreaker, he would have been a top 8 performance. And maybe we talk about his year instead of just continually gushing about Hunter Race, and rightfully so. Hunter Race is a fantastic player. But, Bunny Hopper's another player I think very much worthy in discussion of having an amazing performance. And he just turned in his thesis. So he wasn't even really fully focused on Hearthstone, and yet still juggling it and getting nuts. That is so under-discussed right now. Like, no one's talking about that, but this guy is seriously really good, and he's in my top 10 right now for players that are having a hell of a 2018. So those are some of the categories I want to hit, TJ. Sorry to run over time here, but I just want to give out a couple of awards.
No, I think that kind of stuff is important to talk about. I think that the one thing going to America's playoffs that I thought was lacking was one of those crazy, sloppy highlight reel games.
Yes.
And so I left on Sunday evening after our playoffs cast was done. I left satisfied after it all. So, and that's the best thing. And then I got to go home and change a poopy diaper as soon as I walked in the door.
You went from one poopy diaper
one poopy diaper
that you had to clean up
right to another poopy
verbally
diaper. Yeah.
into one you had to fix manually.
Yeah.
There you go.
So a great playoff season, and I honestly can't wait to championships, and it's pretty close. Not too far away. Just a couple weeks.
Yeah. Just a couple things to wrap up the playoffs discussion here. We mentioned Tespa and how Language Hacker, who's going to the Fall Championship, got some of his first competitive start in Tespa. We've seen a lot of players actually do that. Noblord is a really big proponent of that because he's won Tespa and is constantly threatening for top finishes in Legend and in HCT. And you saw a couple other players do well. If you guys are eligible to compete for the Hearthstone Collegiate Championships, the fall season, make sure you go to compete.tespa.org /Hearthstone, of course, but you should be able to guide it through the website. Registration window is about to close in about a week or so. So on the 29th of September, the registration window closes, and the tournament will run from October 1st to December 16th. So this is for the fall semester, and there's almost $50,000 in scholarships. So it's a lot on the line. Make sure to check it out. It's a good way to get yourself started without having to feel like you have to fully commit to like these Legend monthly runs because students are busy people. You sign up with a team of 3, and you compete in Best of 5 Conquest, and you play it out. And TESPA is really cool too because they experiment with all kinds of formats every season.
Yeah, experiment with formats. It's also you play a match a week.
Yeah,
so
it's not
and the thing that I like is schools have like an unlimited amount of teams that they could have. So even if there's already teams at your school, just find other like-minded Hearthstone players at your school and start playing. Because as someone who after our Legendary Series casts of old that we had, TESPA was kind of where I started casting Hearthstone. Me and That's Admirable, our first real pairing together as a casting duo, was casting Collegiate in 2016. So quite a long time ago, almost 3 years ago now, that we got started. It's always cool. Yeah. It's always fun. It's oftentimes you'll see some schools on stream like dress up and go in full face paint. They're going to a football game. There's a ton of pride.
It's kind of shocking because I remember doing a TESPA finals and interviewing some of those the teams, and it turned out it was an entire classroom of people that were there to support the team, and they did like a school. It was like a flash mob randomly on stream.
Yeah,
I don't remember the exact name of the school. I want to say it was like Fairmont or something, but it was just so interesting to see like how much pride in their Hearthstone team that came out. And it was really cool. And I mean, even if not necessarily for a good performance, but also just to increase the social experience of Hearthstone, right? Being able to do it with your friends, your classmates, your peers, it just makes it all that much sweeter. So make sure to check it out. Compete.tespa.org. TJ, now it's time for the well-played moment.
No!
No?
It's my time to shine.
It's your time to shine.
And now it's time for the well-played moment.
Hold on 1 sec. Okay, now it's time for the well-played moment.
Okay. All right. Well, before I get into the well-played moment, I just want to say that now it's time for the well-played moment.
Producer shaking her head because we are way over time at this introduction. The well-played moment is supposed to take 5 minutes, and I'm sure we just burned like half of it. The well-played moment is Bloodyface versus Tincho. Opening match, or the initial match rather, is a top 8. If you win this match, you have to win only one more to go to the Fall Championships. Really big moment for both these players, but not tournament defining just yet. So a really important foundational game. It's Quest Rogue versus Secret Hunter, and it's not a very good matchup for the Quest Rogue a lot of the times if the Hunter can get out to an early start.
Yes.
So what Bloodyface has in his opening hand is the Quest. Obviously, don't mulligan that ever. 100% keep every time. He has Glacial Shard and Sonya.
Yes.
I think that was his opening
hand. And a Mimic Pod.
And so a lot of people with conventional wisdom say, okay, awesome. I have Glacial Shard. I just need to pick up Bouncer so I can keep freezing these threats. If my opponent plays Cracking Razor Maw on like a Dire Mole, or has a Bear Shark, or has any kind of like Huffer, Misha, etc., I need to stop them so I can prevent taking damage. So a lot of people keep that Glacial Shard in the hand and react to their opponent's board. Bloodyface did something very interesting. He, instead of playing Quest on turn 1, he plays the Glacial Shard on turn 1 and doesn't count towards his Quest, which is, by the way, a really important foundation, because if you're bouncing the Glacial Shard to stall, a lot of times you might as well start the Quest with it. But instead of playing the Quest, he plays Glacial Shard to challenge a potential Secret Keeper or a potential 2-mana drop like a Crackling Razor Maul that could stack on itself. So instead of being reactive, he is proactive. And as a result, Tincho was never really able to get any early game board. Instead, he played Secrets to his Spellstone, which is also a really threatening move. But instead of playing the Quest on turn 2, he daggers up in case his opponent has a good turn 3. And then from that point on, you can just see how his advantages keep stacking. He played Zola on his Glacial Shard without attacking into that secret. Tincho says, okay, you know what, I have to commit to the secret line, plays another secret to set it for a Spellstone. But by the time he ends up getting those 4 3/3 wolves onto the field, the foundation of that the Quest Rogue set by having the Glacial Shard out with Zola and the Dagger to threaten any minion combination of Snake Trap, of Venom Strike Trap, or Wandering Monster, etc., any animal companion, he was so set. Yes, he got Giggling Venom on 5, but he didn't need that. He had Zola plus Fan of Knives to handle any amount of wolves, or he can keep bouncing back the Glacial Shard. And in the end, he didn't need that Glacial Shard to finish a quest, which is also a good recognition of the matchup. He ended up just being able to conserve and take his time. And that is such an important building block for Quest Rogue. Being able to mitigate and being able to prevent is just as important as reacting and barely surviving.
Yeah, it was a good display of kind of manipulating his opponent's game plan.
Yes.
He changed the way that he forced Tincho into one way to play. He couldn't get any early board. He didn't do a single point of damage to Bloody Face until this is turn 6, I think. That he was able to even deal a single point of damage to Bloody Face.
Right.
And even though he delayed the quest progress on Glacial Shard, which looked like it could have been the way to complete the quest, as you said, with Sonya in hand, and one of the most important cards of the matchup, he was still able to buy time and preventing that early face damage, forcing your opponent into one game plan that you can buy time for, was just such brilliant play. And I think you mentioned this when we were discussing the play, just very unintuitive. Like, Quest Rogue wants to just get the quest line and complete it as quick as possible.
Yes.
If you were trying to explain Quest Rogue to any player, that's what it would be. And deviating from that type of gameplay and reading what your opponent can do and knowing what their win conditions are in the matchup is a tough skill to have, and one that Bloody Face not only showed in this matchup, but across many of the matchups he played. This was just the one that we chose because I thought this was the simplest, cleanest, but most well-played moment of the Americas playoffs.
I just want to pull up a stat from HS Replay. The average number of turns being held on 1-drops is 1 point something, like 1.2. Like Firefly, Diamond, like, because you often play it very quickly. You don't hold it often. And so the quest, do you know the stat on how many number of turns it's held on average? It's 0.03. It is played turn 1 so often that it doesn't even come up on a significant number of radar of how often it's not played on turn 1. But the fact that he's able to find a 1-game corner case scenario based on the way his opening hand was and the position the Quest Rogue was in against Secret Hunter, to not play Quest until turn 4, that is really cool in it itself. Just want to point out how uncommon of a game this was.
Every play is obvious when you watch it and see how good it is.
Yes.
Like that I think that's the thing to take away from this. If you're playing this game from your perspective without seeing your opponent's hand, you're not going to make that play.
Right.
Nobody's going to make that play. But in an open deck list, tournament format, when you're playing to be 1 game away from the spot in the championship, and you make a play that looks genius, yeah, you're going to say it's obvious because it just was good.
Yeah.
Like that's how it ends up being, but it's not obvious until someone does it, right?
Everybody in chat, I went back to watch the VOD, we're just like saying like misplay. Why wouldn't you play turn 1 quest? And then it just makes a lot more sense. And obviously that statistic is not exactly like telling a bunch of stuff. It's just an interesting disparity, right? Like people just never not play the quest on 1. Or they just rather a better way to say it. They always play quest turn 1. It's just very rare not to see it. It's really cool, really unconventional, backwards logic, which is what makes Hearthstone cool when you think about it in terms of puzzles and all these crazy board states. Really love it, and that's why it's a well-played moment. And now, TJ, it's time
for the HCG cheer segment.
So we're cheering.
I don't know what I was going to say.
HCG cheer.
And now it's time for the promo.
Introducing HGG Cheer. Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. New for the 2nd season, we're proud to introduce HGG Cheer. Cheering is a way to show support for players and regions while boosting your presence in chat using bits, a virtual good you can buy on Twitch. Along the way, you'll unlock Hearthstone packs, new Twitch emotes, and a unique card back, while the players earn a share of the revenue. To get started, click on the bits icon at the bottom of Twitch chat and select Get Bits. When a team impresses you with a great play, click on the bits icon to cheer them on. You'll summon a team-themed animated cheer mode to celebrate the moment. The more bits you use, the cooler the cheer mode. Additional rewards will unlock as overall cheer levels within the community are reached. Check the HGG Cheer event page to track the progress. Be sure to link your Blizzard and Twitch accounts to claim your loot when it becomes available. We'll see you in the tavern.
All right, hope you guys are really excited for Hearthstone Global Games to transition to a new phase. Now there is the dual tournament stage. First 6 rounds, I believe, were Swiss. And then for the next 2 weeks, ending in September, so September 18th, so you guys would have already seen it, but all the way to the end of September, there's going to be the cut down to who is going to be playing at BlizzCon,
yeah.
DJ, and that's a really big prestige for a lot of these players. Some of the matches this week look really exciting. You have Singapore, headed by Sequinox, looking to see if he can follow up a rather disappointing finish this season for playoffs to try and captain the Singapore team to success, and then the United States. So Singapore versus U.S., Muzzy, San, Terrence M. Really cool lineup there. And then you have also Ukraine versus Norway. I'm looking forward to that match. Ukraine with Kolento Neria, and then Norway with Hunter Ace. It's just really cool to see those two teams go head-to-head and see how deep those teams can go.
Yeah, and of course, we're in the past right now, but we get to see the top 8 at BlizzCon, which is a really cool thing. It is the biggest Hearthstone stage. The World Championship has a lot of players, but it's Hearthstone only. BlizzCon has tons of people there every year. I mean, I've been casting at BlizzCon for the past 2 years, and so it is amazing to be on that stage. These players are playing for not only the chance to be called the best country in Hearthstone, but also the chance to just play on that biggest stage and get to experience that type of environment.
Or just go to BlizzCon. Like a lot of these players, from Eastern Europe or from China, like they don't get a chance to come to BlizzCon very often. So it's a really special moment for them personally as well. So make sure you guys tune in to keep following HG as the cheer program starts. And maybe get some cheering going on so that way we can all get some rewards in that card.
Yeah.
All right. So DJ, why don't you take the honors on this one?
And now it's time
for meme history.
How dare you?
That was actually the well-played moment, sneaking in. This week for meme history, we want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you might see in chat that might be isolated to Twitch culture. You often see an emote SM Orc or Smork as they call it, and then they start saying a bunch of like all caps sentences that have bad English grammar, like caveman speak, where there's like face good, taunt is cheat, and we figured we'd explain a little bit of where that that nomenclature came from.
Yeah, so the origins of Smork or SM Orc, as you said, was basically Hunter in the past used to be a deck that just kind of went face.
It was a very linear class. Like, you often didn't have any deck that didn't involve kill command and killing your opponent.
Kill command, just pressing hero power as much as possible. Exactly. So, and Wolf Riders and all that nonsense. And SM Orc is an orc. Rexar, the hunter hero, also an orc. So it just started to catch on as the emote for whenever someone would play hunter. And also, it just was seen as this class that just didn't take much thought and didn't take much effort to just hit people in the face all the time. So people just started spamming Smork whenever people would play hunter and do that. And then it eventually evolved into people starting to spam Smork whenever anybody would hit face with any class.
Yes.
Because it just...
You hit him with the Paladin 1/1 instead of trading.
Yeah,
like,
everything was Smork. And even casters sometimes use it when they speak about, do we trade or do we Smork? Like it's just become part of Hearthstone's culture, I guess.
Yeah.
Like
many great memes, TJ, it first started off as mockery of what they were targeting. So people were making fun of Hunter players of being, quote, brain dead because all they had to do was play minions on curve, hero power, and kill their opponent versus, playing control paladin or mid-range shaman where you play for border. People had a lot more like quote, self-respect for playing these, like, non-hunter decks. People are making fun of it and kind of, like, bullying in a way to try to, like, make fun of people who like hunter. And then, of course, it started becoming an ironic meme, right? People used to make fun of itself, like making fun of the Smorg thing. And then people started using it literally, too, which is what they're doing now. They're saying, oh, let's just Smorg the face.
Yeah.
So it goes through the entire life cycle of what the meme is, which is, like first mockery, then irony, then literally, and then appreciation. And it goes through a period of sleeping. Like, we didn't use that for a while, like Smorg. It kind of fell off the train because it became a control meta for a very brief period of time. And now it's back. So, I feel like this is a really good explanation of meme history, if you will, just to help you guys understand what it is. TJ, why don't you sign us off the meme history with your tagline? We hope that
we hope that this edition of Meme History has made the Hearthstone community a more inclusive place for all.
Nope. All right, that does it for us today. I want to thank my co-host TJ. It's been a really fun one. It's been kind of a while since we had just us two because the playoffs coming back, we had like a third guest, and then you had that week off where you had your son.
We had a night at home without the children,
you
basically
were slacking off, going home, raising a family. So really nice, but at the same time, it's sad because playoffs are done. I won't see you until champs. Is it?
Until champs, yeah. I'm actually back at work this week, back full time.
Oh, man.
I'm delaying the rest of my paternity leave until the end of the year when things start to slow down again. But I'm back at work this week to get ready for fall championships. So we're working full time again. But yeah, fall championships is actually coming up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
so
a few weeks.
It's not even like it won't be that long. We also have the next episode of TalkStone, which we're back on our normal cadence, as you'll also mention in your outro in 2 weeks.
That's right.
So we will see each other then. But yeah, it's full steam ahead for the fall championship.
That's right. That's going to be, I believe, October 11th to the 14th, featuring Sinto, Stayin, Trunks from China coming back, Doc Rivius, Tyler representing APAC. It's going to be a really fun time, as well as some of the new challengers coming into the fold. Who's going to be, the new rising star, Pavel, etc., that we saw from the past. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You can find more episodes of TalkStone on twitch.tv/playhearthstone every other week at 6 p.m. Pacific. If you want more Hearthstone esports news, analysis, and updates, check out playhearthstone.com/esports for all things Hearthstone. We'll see you next time in the tavern.